Concept testing is a fundamental stage in new product development. The cost of new product failure is steep, not just with the expense of development and launch, not just from lost revenue, but also from brand reputation. There's nothing that leads to a successful new product than previous successful new products. Just think of Apple. When we line up to get their next iPhone, it's because we were so pleased with the last. Within the market research community, when the idea of testing new products comes up, our minds go to one type of study, the traditional concept test. But there are different types of concept testing depending on where you are in the new product development process. Sometimes we may have just too many ideas. In this case, we simply need to understand if the concept has the potential prior to spending much time on it. In other words, sometimes we just need to screen out the dogs. The basic idea is to fail fast, to quickly set aside those ideas that have little chance of commercial success so that we don't burn up time and resources on those. Other times we need to understand it more deeply, how to talk about it, the proof points that might work, potential barriers, how to improve the concept. Now, this second type of concept test will also be used to identify which ideas to drop. But typically, we go into this phase with much fewer ideas. In this video, I'll show you the true north approach to the first type, to screen out lots of ideas. We call it rapid review. You will see that it's more predictive, easier, and faster, but it also provides much more insight than traditional concept screens. In addition to testing product concepts, this process works great for screening potential messages, product designs, promotional ideas, and even brand or product names. So let's get to it. Before revealing our approach, and since our system is somewhat different than what others might propose, let me give you a bit of a background. But first, I'm going to spill the punchline. This system follows the same process humans use when making real-world decisions. And as a benefit, it's more predictive than traditional survey-based screeners. And it has the side benefit of being easier, faster, and less expensive to execute. So what's not to like? Now, I read this book about a decade ago. Now, it was very critical of traditional market research. Although it made some good points, I quickly dismissed it. But then came more. These two even won the Nobel Prize. In fact, Kahneman is the only psychologist ever to win the Nobel Prize in economics. Then came more. There became a point where I could not ignore what these researchers are telling us. So what does this all mean for concept testing? Let's start with scales. This is the Likert Scale. We're all familiar with it. I'm going to pick on it just for a moment, but what I'm about to say applies to any scale. Likert invented this scale 88 years ago. This isn't your father's scale. This is your grandfather's scale. But this is still how we evaluate brands today, and similar scales are used to evaluate new product ideas. We've learned a lot since then. We can do better. This is perhaps the biggest issue. Humans don't make decisions on a 5-point scale. They make choices. One way of describing how humans make decisions is scaffold theory. This is how it works. Let's say you're at home with your significant other, and you ask, should we eat in or eat out tonight? Well, let's eat out. I don't feel like making anything. Well, okay. What type of restaurant should we eat at? Let's go to a fast casual restaurant. Okay, which one? Well, the game's on tonight, so let's go to Buffalo Wild Wings. Notice, no scales, just a series of choices. So why don't we follow that same process? Does Buffalo Wild Wings have high prices? Well, what about compared to Taco Bell? Now, what about compared to your favorite date night restaurant, such as Bonefish Grill? Now, did your answer change depending on who we compared Buffalo Wild Wings to? If it did, that's a problem. This demonstrates that evaluation should be in context to the competitive set. But we rarely do that. We typically evaluate options in isolation. And that's our next problem. Most scale-based surveys evaluate options in isolation. Let's review. Humans make choices. They don't evaluate options on a 5-point scale. Evaluations need to be in context with the competitive set. But there's more. Traditional scales are difficult to answer, leading to less engagement. Traditional scales don't allow for cross-cultural comparisons. But what do we typically do? We ignore it. And how do we treat respondents who don't know the answer? A 3 on a 5-point scale is fundamentally different than a don't know. So why do we still use these scales? We developed a better approach. We created a process that models the decision-making process. As you might expect, this process is proving to be more predictive than traditional survey-based methods. And it's easier and faster to execute. To demonstrate how well it predicts, we created a test-control research-on-research study. In this test, we use a category we all know, fast food restaurants, just to show you how it works. We created 2 cells, one with a traditional 5-point purchase likelihood scale and one with our choice approach. Here are the results. First, let's look at the top 2 box scores from the purchase likelihood scale. Do you see any surprises? I didn't. Perhaps I might expect McDonald's to be a bit higher than Wendy's, but nothing major. Now, let's compare this to market share. Look at this. Even though Wendy's and McDonald's purchase intent scores are essentially identical, they have dramatically different market shares. What's going on? Now, let's bring in our choice results. Look at this. The numbers are almost spot on with actual share. Now, let's look at all 12 restaurants. This shows the purchase intent across all 12. Now, let's compare results to share. This should give any researcher heartburn. Now, a typical volumetric process is to add a constant to the research scores to predict share. But look at this. The slopes are different, even at this end of the scale. This means we can't simply add a constant when using these scales. Now let's overlay our choice results. The choice lies right on top of the share line. We couldn't have asked for better results. This simply demonstrates what should be obvious, that following the choice process humans use in the real world will result in more predictive results. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we're trying to do? Now let me show you how this works for concept testing and how it adds much more insight than traditional concept screens. After the screener, we'll go through the consideration phase. Then we come back to get choice. But then we added a specific process to capture diagnostics. These diagnostics will include open ends, but I'll talk more about capturing qualitative feedback later. Then, of course, we captured demos for data analysis. Again, in the real world, humans quickly scan options, then make choices to consider or not. This phase is designed to mimic that stage. The respondent tells us if she will consider each concept. Notice that this example is on a smartphone. We know the world is going mobile, so should our surveys. I recently interviewed advanced traders. These guys are not only trading futures, they're trading options on futures, and they're doing it all on their phones. If we want a truly representative sample, we need to make our surveys mobile friendly. After all, who goes home after work and fires up their PCs anymore? Max diff, lots of scales, they're all difficult on a mobile device, but this method works great. At this point, we bring back those options they would consider and get choice. And again, this is our key metric, the percent choosing an option. Now this form has the benefit of putting options all together into a competitive set. Now we follow the same process for capturing diagnostics. We ask the respondents to select those options that are, for example, new and different. Notice they have the option to select none of these. This is important. We can use this added insight in the analysis, and we're not forcing them to answer if they don't know the answer. Now, from an execution standpoint, this approach is very efficient. In this case, let's say we have 5 concepts and 5 questions. It would take 25 separate questions to get what we can do in just 5. And it's more realistic, fun, and engaging for respondents as well. Now, we could do what most firms do, give you a big PowerPoint deck 6 weeks later. Or we could kick out your results into a dashboard so that you can see the findings within a few days of the study. Not only will it provide the results for the current study, but it can compare results to past studies. This will serve as your history and your own custom normative database. So no need to dig out old studies to see how the current concepts compare. Many different qualitative approaches can be added to this. This is just a summary. We can certainly add open-ends to the survey. This is the fastest, easiest, and least expensive option. And we can have the uncoded verbatims available within 48 hours of the survey launch. We can also create a video open-end. We simply invite a respondent, based on their specific responses, to video record their answers. These tend to be more expressive and also tend to provide more feedback. Now, we don't need to do this for all responses. We try to target about 20 or so to get good qualitative feedback. A useful option may be to take the winners and put them into a discussion board. The board will be arranged and planned ahead of time and launched immediately following the quantitative study. All we need to do is decide which concepts to drop in. This way, we can provide rich results quickly after the end of the quantitative survey. Finally, we can follow the same process and have focus groups set up so that we can simply drop the winning concepts into the guide. A key benefit of this, especially in the case with teams involved, is that there is nothing like hearing firsthand. Nothing beats getting the team together behind the glass. We can design and build on the spot. And of course, you can use different qualitative methods with different tests. You don't need to pick one and live with it. Again, the system is very flexible. Thank you for your time.